Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Krista Burris, and I'm here with Coachella Valley Direct Primary Care. And today is March, I believe, 24th. Yes, is that right? Or is it February? It's gotten to the point where it can be a little difficult to tell, but it is March 24th. And we're here to talk about the Coachella Valley situation with coronavirus, as well as where we are in our county with reopening and the new vaccines that are coming out, as well as our current status and tier, and sort of just like an overview of everything. So, what I'd like to do is sort of set the stage for where we are now. We've basically been coming down from a really large spike over the winter months, and we've been in this nice sort of downward trajectory in our number of cases, hospitalizations, and positivity rates, as well as ICU levels and deaths. And that trend is continuing to go down. So that's the really good news. In fact, we're getting fairly close to the orange tier. And I wanted to sort of set the stage for that so we understand sort of where we are at this moment in time. And especially because there are some concerning things happening in the county as far as vaccines. So the first slide that we're going to see here is our daily epidemiology slide, and that is from March 23rd. And our cases are continuing to drop. Our PCR new cases are at 287. Unfortunately, we're still seeing a fair number of deaths every day, and this is because our deaths will lag our cases. As the cases come down, our deaths do come down, but slower, because that represents the number of people who were admitted to the hospital, say, a month ago, rather than the people who are being admitted currently. Having said that, our current hospitalizations in the whole county are only 149, and this is great. This is so much better. This is actually less than just one hospital was at the peak. And our current ICU in the county is only 28. And if we go all the way to the bottom of this, what you'll see is that our positivity rates are continuing to slowly decline. However, we've kind of hit a plateau. So we got down to about 2.9 and we got stuck. And what we need is for this number to continue to drop. We are at that range next week. If we stay there, we will technically qualify by numbers for some good stuff, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But that positivity rate stalling is potentially a problem because we've also reopened and started to mix more, and we've got spring break and the Easter holiday coming up, and these are all potential problems that might stall us moving through the tiers. Okay, let's look at the next slide. This is our weekly slide for our District 4, which is the Coachella Valley. And this shows us the week ending on March 21st, so that's his last week. And in the Coachella Valley, we had 5 deaths and 200 new cases reported. These are some positive numbers. The 5 deaths are a little higher than last week, but our new weekly cases are continuing to trend downward. Let's go down here to the middle of the slide and we'll see our hospitalizations. Again, a nice trend downward. We like to see this, especially in that blue line, which is our total hospitalizations. That tells us that we're moving in the right direction. And then all the way to the bottom, we'll see our testing numbers have actually continued to stay pretty good. Last week we did we did 8,700 tests in the Coachella Valley, which is good. And our positivity rate is slightly over the county. We're at 3.1, but still in a nice low rate, which we'd like to see continuing to drop. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, which is looking at where we are in the tiers. And if we come down and look at Riverside County, see, this is our state. So if we click on Riverside, we'll see that we are still in the red tier, but we have our cases per day is at 4.8 per 100,000. In order to move to the orange tier, the next tier down, we need that to be under 4. So we need it to be 3.9 or less. And really, we've kind of stalled at that right now. If you remember, we're kind of stuck right now at a positivity rate of about 2.9%. And unless that continues to drop, our cases per 100,000 will stay the same as well. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of movement here. And you'll see that 2.9% is not an improvement. Our 7-day average was 2.7. So we are essentially stuck at this almost on the edge of orange, but we haven't continued to move in the right direction. So that's all for the slides. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what's gotten us stuck. I think we're so used to seeing really high numbers, and we've seen this trend drop down that we're thinking it's just going to continue. But in reality, things are starting to change. We have a lot more people in the valley. If you've been driving around, you probably see more traffic, see more people coming in from other places. We've definitely had more of our restaurants open up. We're now having indoor dining. Our kids have gone back to school. The movie theaters have reopened. There's just a lot more chance for the virus to circulate. Also, we have the new strains here in the area that are starting to circulate, and these are more transmissible and now we think actually more dangerous. And this is in the setting of a massive effort to vaccinate our high-risk people. And we've actually been doing a pretty good job. Over half of our seniors over 65 have received both their shots. And this is great because this means that the people who are most likely to have a bad outcome with COVID, at least half of them are protected. But this still leaves the other half. And that's certainly enough people to get us back into trouble if we aren't careful. And this is my concern right now. I really, really want us to be able to continue opening up, but we need to be a little more cautious about how quickly we do it, or we may end up with another spike and another spike in hospitalizations. Going along with this is there has been a slowdown in demand for vaccination. And I think what's happened is we've finally gotten to that level of vaccine hesitancy that we are going to have to address if we're going to be successful at achieving adequate vaccination rates in the community. So what's happened is over the last week, there have been multiple days where there are actually vaccine appointments that are going untaken. And it used to be that when the county put out their vaccine clinics, they were gone within an hour or two. And now what we're finding is that, even today I was looking and there were still vaccine appointments available at the Indio Fairgrounds for today. And some of this may be people doing a little bit of vaccine preferential looking and looking for specific a specific vaccine, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, or the Johnson and Johnson. I know we still have a fair number of people who need to be vaccinated in the current tiers. We have by no means vaccinated everyone in these tiers. So we're at definitely less than half of the population who's eligible has gone to get vaccinated. So this raises a level of concern to me that we actually need another approach. There has been some efforts by the Desert Health District to take the vaccine out into the community in the East Valley. But I think we also are going to need to start thinking about the people in our own spheres around us who may be eligible for a vaccine, but for some reason haven't gotten it. And maybe offering to help them get to a vaccine or help them make an appointment, or help reassure them that the vaccine is actually are safe. We have currently 3 vaccines that are being given, the Pfizer and the Moderna, which were the 2-shot regimens that have been around since December. And we now have some pretty good safety data on them. They've been given to hundreds of millions of people around the world. And we're not really seeing any significant concerns with them. So that is really good news. These vaccines, although they are a new technology, I want to reassure people that they actually work in the body in the same way, which is that they provide a protein to the immune system to study and create antibodies against. It's just the way they provide that protein is slightly different. But they're not doing anything weird with your DNA or anything. So I think this was, some people had a little reticence, and so they were kind of looking forward to the Johnson and Johnson vaccine because it was made with older technology that's been around longer, and also you only needed 1 shot. And so there are a lot of people, I think, who were kind of excited about that idea and are looking for a Johnson and Johnson vaccine. Other people may have looked at the efficacy data and seen different numbers there and thought, oh, the Johnson and Johnson vaccine's not good as good as the others. But actually, they're all 3 actually spectacular at preventing severe disease and hospitalization. So from my standpoint, getting a shot, whatever you can get access to, go ahead and do it if you're in the appropriate tier, because every person who's vaccinated breaks that potential line of transmission and gets us that 1 step closer back to normal. Another vaccine called the AstraZeneca vaccine has just applied for an emergency use authorization from the FDA this week. And this is the one that's been in the news, if you've been listening, recently, because a couple weeks ago, they halted this vaccine usage over in Europe because of a concern of blood clots that had been reported in people after vaccination. But after review of the data, it doesn't look like the blood clots were occurring at a higher rate than in the general population who was not vaccinated. So when they went back and look at it, they were happy and they went ahead and restarted vaccination over in Europe. In the United States, they have looked at the blood clot issue specifically and haven't seen it as an increased risk. But it's something that, because of that experience in Europe, they will be specifically looking for. Also, there was a little bit of a brouhaha about the data they had put out in a press release, because they had issued initial data reports as of February that represented the vaccine's performance against the earlier strains of the COVID vaccine, much like Pfizer and Moderna's data when it first came out was really against that early strain, not against the new variants. And they kind of got criticized for this a little bit because they actually have later data that is not quite as good, but is still very good. So this is very similar to what happened with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, in that some of their data was from against the variant. So it doesn't look as good as the Pfizer Moderna, but it actually isn't really comparing apples to apples. It's more apples to oranges. Also, it looks like the AstraZeneca data is also similarly to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, a very, very good at preventing hospitalization and death. So it's super good at preventing that severe disease and pretty good at preventing all disease. But much like the other vaccines, there are still some symptomatic cases of COVID. And that's why even after you're vaccinated, it's still recommended that you mask and social distance even after vaccination until we have this, number of transmission in the community down basically to zero. That would mean that we no longer have an epidemic of COVID and we can take our masks off. So that's probably still, let's say, a good 6 months away. Maybe longer, we'll see. It depends on how much, how well we do actually stopping the transmission of the disease around the world, because we don't actually exist in a bubble. Once things start to open up more, there's more movement of people around the world, and being able to vaccinate the whole world and get the disease under control everywhere will allow us to actually return to normal. So the new AstraZeneca vaccine, which again has not yet been given an emergency use authorization, but may in the next few weeks actually come out onto the market, that one is also a 2-shot regimen. So the only one shot is still the Johnson & Johnson. And of note, they are actually studying it currently as a 2-shot regimen, and we may see the recommendation for that change in the next few months as they get data from what happens with a 2-shot dosing regimen. So that's where we are currently with the vaccines. Again, if you're eligible, please make an appointment and go get your shot. If you're waiting to, see how more people do, we've now vaccinated hundreds of millions of people. And, some of us have actually been vaccinated now for 4 or 5 months. What we do know is that a hefty percentage of people that actually get COVID, even mild COVID, end up with some chronic symptoms. This is not happening with the vaccine, but it is happening with the disease. And therefore, I think even if you're a low-risk person, it's going to really be a smart thing to get vaccinated for this rather than just allowing yourself to catch COVID at some point. I think that is something that I'm really encouraging people to do, even if they're young and healthy. When it's your turn, get your shot, because you could actually end up with a long haul COVID syndrome even after mild disease, or you could end up giving it again to someone in your family who could also have those problems. So not just preventing death and hospitalization, but also preventing that long-term chronic sort of inflammatory disease that is seen in a certain percentage of people who get COVID. So let's see. Today we do not have Dr. Kim because he is getting the car fixed. Apparently, cars still break down even if you don't go anywhere. So that's where we are today, and that's all I have for you. And hopefully you'll join us at 3:30, for our Your Personal Health, where we talk about primary care and Coachella Valley direct primary care. And we hope to see you then.